Hey guys, welcome back to PHT TV. You may notice that we are in a different location today. Trey and I have actually packed up, and what did we do?
We loaded up our stuff and came to Kentucky.
Came to Kentucky. We wanted to see the brand new...
I sound like I was from Kentucky anyway.
Trey's actually from Arkansas. We'll learn a little bit more about Trey here in a little bit because today is the episode of Q&A. So you guys have asked a bunch of questions and we're going to answer them. And the top question is, who the hell is this guy? And the other question is, who the hell is that guy? So a little bit more of you know him. So who the hell is this guy came first. We're going to dive into that a little bit more here shortly. We are actually in the showroom of Paducah Home Theater, where they show off Klipsch horns, Cornwalls, Jubilees, La Scalas. So these next couple episodes we're going to be shooting from here and bringing you a whole bunch of information.
Being a certified heritage dealer, they carry folded horn cabinets and bass reflex cabinets from the heritage line in stock. They have a lot of them in stock actually, and I think that's a future video.
Yeah, here shortly we're probably going to show you guys, we're going to do a tour of not only this facility, the showroom itself, but we're going to dive into a warehouse tour as well. So be sure and stay tuned for that.
So Jason, everybody's asked who we are. Who are you? What's your history? What's your background? I know, but they don't. I won't tell all I know. So
early on I started doing video production, shooting skateboarding videos of myself and my friends. From there, I started shooting. My brother was in a band. It was called Distill, and we'll actually be using them to demo some of the speakers later on. But they were in a band, and the next step in my video production career is I actually started making music videos for those guys, and it just kind of sprouted from there. I went to college for production telecommunications, started my own company, and basically started making videos from local commercials to music videos for local artists, all the way up to wedding videos and all kinds of random stuff.
you even went out and got your pilot's license for drone.
Yeah.
So you can do drone flight video as well. Right?
Yeah, I am an FAA certified drone pilot as well. So
if they only knew what I knew, they wouldn't have done that.
Yeah, probably true. Beyond that, a couple years later, I actually started working for Klipsch for customer service, doing both of these gigs simultaneously. So I was working for Klipsch at the same time as running my own business on the side. Learned a lot about speakers, learned a ton about speakers. After I did customer support, I moved on to dealer support and started working with people like Corey with Paducah Home Theater and just pretty much every dealer that Klipsch ran into. As my business started to grow and become more lucrative, I was weighing the pros and cons of staying at home and running my own business versus staying at Klipsch and running some of their items. So I actually decided to part ways with Klipsch and pursue my own company full time. And shortly after I left Klipsch, they actually started using me to create their customer service videos, their marketing videos, and actually I got back into the tie with Klipsch, creating videos for Klipsch as well. So while I had left Klipsch full time, I actually got back into Klipsch and became their preferred videographer for everything Klipsch related video wise.
You've worked on just about all the marketing schemes over the last, 3 years?
Yeah, so the Behind the Spec series, we've done a lot of customer service videos.
You've had to sit with Roy in front of a camera for a long period of time.
Thanks, Trey.
I'm sorry, bad memories. We love you, Roy.
Roy is awesome, by the way. So basically my life went from creating skateboarding videos to creating music videos to creating commercial videos, wedding videos, to kind of taking a hiatus to dive into speakers for a little while, and then coming back all full circle, working for my own production company again, and putting those two items together and creating videos for Klipsch. So I did not solely do marketing. I also looked at it from the customer service side and how to
informative.
Make it informative as opposed to just like, this is pretty, look at this pretty speaker. No, let's show you how it works and show you how it functions and tell you why it's awesome.
Well, there's lots of lights, buttons, and bells, as they say, with the marketing videos. Whereas with the customer service videos, it's a little more hands-on functionality, you know. So now that's kind of where I come from. You know, I started in the audio world. I was telling Corey this story earlier about my first car audio install was somewhere in the late 70s, 78, 79. And I worked at a little small motorcycle shop as a motorcycle mechanic and detailer, and I put together all the new bikes and that kind of stuff. And they sold CB radios and worked on the local police radios and did small amount of car audio. Car audio wasn't big, you know. What was it? Our top end brand was Arthur Fulmer. They also make motorcycle helmets. And there weren't power amplifiers. You had power boosters back then, and all the little boosters, they were just a little brick, basically, with screw terminals on the side. It was a whole different world back in that day. But you know, that's where I kind of started audio, was back at that time. And about that same time, we talked about that in the La Scala video, where, you know, I started getting into audio and started paying attention to what things sounded like, because I found Klipsch speakers under the bleachers at the high school, you know. So my world went from that to doing car audio, and then there was local bands around, and I started running sound and playing in the PA world. I didn't play an instrument. I can't carry a tune in a bucket, so my only choice was to carry the speakers around and be a grunt and make them sound good. So
I've heard him sing. Maybe if you stick around, he'll give you a sample.
Oh no, we're not going to do that on tape. We did that. Only time we did karaoke was in China. That way nobody in the United States could see or hear.
Surprise, we have that for you later on.
Oh God, I hope Melissa didn't video that. Yeah, so I worked around the area doing car audio for a number of years. I went to work in Texarkana, out of Hope, Arkansas. All this was taking place in Hope, Arkansas at the time. And I went to work in Texarkana doing car audio for a place called Soundtown. And Soundtown started in 1969 is when they opened their business, but that's also the year they started selling Klipsch speakers. And they are the closest and one of the longest dealers for Klipsch. They currently sell product at 2120 Texas Boulevard. I could probably spit the phone number out if I tried real hard. That's only been 30 years ago, 5 years ago. It was funny, Bruce Cullum at the time owned the place, and he sold the company to one of his customers, Todd Lumpkin, and Todd currently runs and operates Soundtown in Texarkana, Texas. Good bunch of folks. But I went to work for him doing car audio and started kind of on the side selling Klipsch speakers. And that was about the time that the Polk Audio SDA speakers came out. And the ad had a picture of the speaker with Matthew Polk leaned up against the speaker. You know, it's how tall and big this big old speaker were. Mm-hmm. We had these things set up in the same room with K-horns at Soundtown. Mm-hmm. And I loved to walk in there, and they just had an A-B switch. So you could take that amp and switch this speaker versus that speaker. You turn it on, you get the SDAs playing, and man, it'd be kicking. And you know, it'd be rocking. You'd be listening good, and all of a sudden you flip over to the K-horns, and the walls would start breathing, and the lights would start moving, and the people's hair would start going back, and their eyes would get really big and go, I want those. So yeah,
and that's the same amp, the same everything. It's just essentially just flipping the switch over to this significantly more efficient speaker.
Dynamic range, my friend. Power, detail, and emotion. It fits very well with the Klipsch sign. But I worked Soundtown for a number of years, doing car audio for them. They bought a new place. We moved over into the new building, and I went for that for a while. And then I went from there and worked out in Dallas for a little while, doing audio at a couple of stores in Dallas, and then back to Little Rock. I did audio there, And then I went back to Arkansas and started building chicken houses. And kind of still did a little car audio and PA stuff on the side.
He still builds chicken houses.
Yeah, still got one to finish. Not commercially any longer, but that was a fun time. I learned a lot, did a lot of hard work, learned what real work was and why I wanted to get my degree in college so I could stop working hard and sit behind a desk and get fat. Well, I learned how to do that. Worked real well.
I think that's actually one of the questions we were going to cover today.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
are we getting into the questions?
Not quite yet, but since you mentioned that one of the questions we had was, did Trey get his belly from drinking too much beer, or are there other factors at play?
Absolutely other factors. I'm not a beer drinker. I stopped drinking beer long time ago, for the most part. I'll still drink a little bit of beer every once in a while, but I'm not a fan. Don't like the flavor. Now bourbon, that's a whole nother story. You know, a little White Lightning. I like a strong. You know, I've got a bottle of Turkey 101 in the fridge right now.
Yeah, waiting for you when you get home.
It's been there for a year and it's not finished yet. So I am not a drinker.
Yeah. So anyways,
too many soda pops and not moving away from the table quick enough. That's all that is. Old and fat and sitting behind a desk for the last 20 years.
Yeah. Well, the rule is you got to finish your meal before you can leave. And I've started learning, my kids are 2 and 5. When they don't finish their meal and walk away and they go to dinner or go to bed early, I finish their meal too. So I eat all of our plates all gone. So
it's got to be all gone, though.
Yeah, everything's all gone. It's not
rule.
the rule of who eats it. It's got to be all gone.
So I from that point I started doing after I got out of doing construction work, I went back to doing car audio and things like that, and run into a fellow there in Hope, Arkansas that had moved in from Texas. And he had opened or bought the Radio Shack. And I had worked at Radio Shack in the past there in Hope, and so I knew their functioning. But he was a Radio Shack dealer, which allowed him to do more than just Radio Shack. So we were doing car audio, we were doing home audio, we were doing satellite, cell phones, a little bit of everything. And so we kept that going for a number of years. And then in, August 2nd, 1999, I went to work for Klipsch. It was kind of a fun...
That's a very specific date for being so long ago.
It was, and it stuck in my head, and I don't know why, but that's my anniversary date at Klipsch. Jim Hunter was the one that did my entrance, what was it? What do they call it?
Onboarding?
Onboarding interview. That's the word. That's what I'm trying to. He was the one doing the onboarding interview, and the last couple of questions I thought were pretty interesting, and I guess he thought my answer was a little interesting because the questions were, "What's the best thing you bring to this position?" And I didn't think before I answered the question. I just answered the question as me. So my answer was my love of this shit. Normally you wouldn't want to curse in your entrance thing. So he cocks his eye to me, as you might seen Jim do, and he says, "Well, then what's the worst thing you bring to this position?" I said, "I have a hard time spelling my name, but I know how to use spell check." That was
Jim Hunter, if you're not aware, is the historian from last week's video. So make sure you check out the history video. Jim Hunter is the curator of the Klipsch Museum. Awesome guy.
He worked for Klipsch for 30-something years, was the senior engineer. As he onboarded to Klipsch, he left his current job, packed up a pair of Heresy woofers and sent them to Klipsch. He walked into the door at Klipsch, unpacked those woofers, and went to putting them into the Heresy. So he's had a long love affair of the Klipsch product and Paul Klipsch and the name. Him and the Klipsch family have been, since he came to work for them, had been very, very close over the years. There's some stories I can't tell. There's some stories you can tell. But for the most part, Jim was very loved by that family, and still is for everyone that's still around, including me. Love some Jim Hunter. He's a good guy.
Actually, going forward, we're going to reach out to Jim a little bit more. When we do the K-Horn history video, you'll probably hear from Jim on a phone call or something to that effect.
We're going to try to get him involved. So he is so good at that stuff. And he has so many intricate stories and so many little details about that product from over the years. And I can point out a few of them, but let's face it, I learned them from Jim Hunter. So a few from Roy here and there, but mostly that stuff I learned from Jim Hunter, following him around, listening to him talk.
Even the stuff about Roy, some of that you learned from Jim
Hunter. Yeah, absolutely. Those were the things Roy didn't want us to know.
So we may get carried away at different points on this Q&A subject, especially when you ask about our background, because I mean it's extensive and it's all related.
Hell, I started doing this stuff when I was 16 and I'm 57, so a day or two.
Yeah, and I probably forgot half of mine too. Oh yeah, I did go on tour for a while too.
Oh yeah, you worked for Price is Right.
Yeah, so in that hiatus portion that I was mentioning, I worked in my hiatus from video production. I was actually video technical director for the On the Road show for Price is Right. So I did a lot of video work there as well before coming to Klipsch. I actually stopped being on tour because we had our first child, and there's times when I was on the road for 6 months at a time and I didn't want to be away from my baby that long. So
you had a pretty young wife at the house that she appreciated you coming home too.
There's that.
Not sure why, but she did.
Yeah, I don't know. So yeah, there's probably stuff we missed too along the way, but
oh Lord, yeah. There's story about our lives that nobody wants to know, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But from the audio side, we both have a pretty good berth of what this all is,
Let's go ahead and dive into the questions though, because
you got questions?
Yeah, this whole Q&A episode is already 20 minutes long. Oh, all right, you guys. Trey talks too much and he filled up my memory cards, so we had to take a quick break. Anyways, so that's the introduction to Jason and to Trey. Probably more information than you ever wanted to know, but you guys asked, so. Who the hell is this guy and who the hell is that guy?
They had other questions, didn't they?
No, that was it. That's the end of the episode.
Oh, well, we can talk some more about us then.
Yeah, what do you got?
No. I started customer service.
Let's not do that. All right, so the first question, who the hell is this guy? Who the hell is that guy? That has been covered. We're going to dive right in. So this next question that we had posted, this was the top rated question, was with Klipsch speakers being so efficient, does adding external amps with huge power really make a difference?
The answer is yes. The why of the answer comes a little deeper. The Klipsch speaker is a very efficient speaker by DNA, by design.
Well, it's designed to be very efficient in that it can run off of very little power and still sound decent. That doesn't mean that adding more power would hurt.
Well, I relate it to cars when I talk to people about it, because it makes more sense to most people when you can do that. Mm-hmm. If you own a Corvette, you can drive that Corvette 30 miles an hour downtown for its entire life, and it will do a fine job. You conversely can get out on a legal location and drive that car 120 miles an hour, and it'll do okay, because it's designed to do that. It has the horsepower and the headroom in the motor to run 120 and coast at 30. Conversely, if you were to go get a Prius and drive that sucker downtown all its life for 30 miles an hour, it'll do a fine job, give you wonderful gas mileage in doing so. But you get that sucker on that same road and try to run 120 miles an hour, you're going to run out of Prius poop real quick. It just doesn't have the motor. It runs out of headroom. So the point being is, if you get an amplifier that's real small and you ask it to do real small task, it'll do so at a very well. Typically any amplifier. Mm-hmm. If
like you saw, we tested the Heresies and the Fortes on home theater in a box, essentially.
Base level receiver. Mm-hmm. Whereas conversely, if you had that same amplifier and you ask it to do that 120 mile an hour or that extreme high volume, it could easily run out of power in the power supply to give you that much voltage. With dynamic power, or meaning the instantaneous demand being higher, peak power. That's the number everybody is used to, is peak power. That being quickly and dissipated, but a high amount of power in a short period of time. That happens at small volumes. I mean, 1812 overture, the dynamics between boom, boom, is huge. At even low volumes, the dynamic between the two is huge. Whereas if you had that thing cranked and you hit that dynamic, you could easily run out of power at the upper extension of the request of the amplifier because the amp doesn't have it. Whereas if you had a larger amplifier, you wouldn't have that problem. So if you're going to be a somewhat low volume listener and, listen at a volume that you can always hear your wife holler your name,
why would you want to do that?
Then the standard amplifier will get you by. If you want an amplifier that can give you enough volume that you can't hear her hollering your name anymore, then you probably need one with more power. Now,
I need one with more power. Sorry.
Or as you get older, you can just tune out those frequencies. And you say, honey, what?
Should I cut that or should I leave that in for her?
Well, we'll save that.
We'll see if she actually watches.
Yeah, see if she's actually subscribed to this channel. Yeah. So the answer is how you're going to use your system. It's a question, not a given answer. If you're going to use your system in a manner that you're going to be taxing your amplifier constantly, then it makes sense to get one that you don't do that anymore. Everything runs better in its torque curve than it does at its red line, including us. We do better walking for long distances than we do at running at long distances, or across the yard for my matter. But because I don't have the headroom, the built up stamina, the motor to do that. Whereas if, you've got a long distance runner, they plan for that, they've built for that, they're designed to do that, they can handle it.
Pro System Design, we worked together quite a bit in that headroom case in designing systems, say like landscape systems or just home installs where you're using whole home systems. The question would be asked, hey, is this KDA 1000 or KDA 500 enough to power all of these landscape systems in 70 volt? And you can preach the calculation that you use.
Absolutely. What the consensus is never go below 20% headroom. We design everything in Pro Systems Design, unless specified otherwise, at double. So if we need 100 watts, we spec a 200 watt amp on that channel, or worth that channel. If we're looking at needing a 500 watts on a circuit, then we don't have an amp in-house big enough because there's not headroom involved. We have a 500 watt per channel amp, but we don't have one that has headroom above that. Mm-hmm. So I can't spec that amp in that position. I have to be able to go back and have headroom. 20% is doable a lot of times if it's a system that will never be taxed hard. Mm-hmm. If you've got
set and leave kind of system where like maybe a restaurant or something.
Yeah, well, no, not necessarily a restaurant. The local dentist office, that kind of place. It's going to be set at a set volume. It's a pretty low volume. You're never going to run. It's background music only. In foreground music at the bar or at the restaurant, they want to be able to get that louder in the evening. And unless you have the capability to getting a certain amount of decibel range above the ambient noise in the room, then the system won't be heard, nor will it be intelligible. What's the point in being there if you can't, if you're listening to it, it doesn't work, So you have to be intelligible. So you have to have enough volume in the system to get above ambient volume and be intelligible. If you don't have headroom in your amplifier, you may not be able to get there, and run consistently all year long for multiple years in a row.
Without
the whole
murdering portions of your system.
Right. The whole point is to put this thing in and not have to fix it again, not have to do anything to it. So if you plan it to, I've used this for years. I plan for an elephant, I expect a mouse. If I do that, I never go back to fix the system because it doesn't break. You plan in the error that you're going to expect to see, and you don't have those problems.
So to answer the question in short,
Yes.
with Klipsch, yes, it matters. It does make a difference. And the question is, the question back at you, what are your listening patterns? What are you using the system for? Because that is the primary component when choosing any source, whether it be the speakers, whether it be the amp. The key component is you. What are you doing with the system?
There's no absolute right answer. There are a few wrong answers. The worst thing you can do is send a distorted signal to your speaker. If you send a distorted signal to your speaker, the weakest link in that speaker will probably fail. And in most speakers, that's the tweeter.
Oh yeah.
So distortion equals failure.
Yeah. Essentially, the dumbed down description is you're using every bit of power that amp is giving. You're using all of that to drive the woofer because that is the most power hungry component, and all you're sending up to the tweeter is you're sending distortion, and it's just done.
That's a reasonable statement. Tweeters
Trey approved.
Tweeters act like fuses under distorted loads. Yes, they do.
Next. All right, so this kind of ties in. I put this in next portion because it kind of ties in. The question was, with heritage speakers being as efficient as they are, what amplifiers perform best and what power should they have? Kind of already touched on that during that description, but heritage specific.
Heritage specific. Well, without being too in depth on specs and being able to look at just specs as a prerequisite to be a heritage amp, I would look at a couple of different things in the amplifier.
Distortion.
Total harmonic distortion at full bandwidth. If the amp doesn't show you total harmonic distortion with full bandwidth, 20 to 20K, if it shows you at one note, they're lying to you. Because I don't care about 1K only. Yeah. I care about 20 to 20. And if that amp can't give me that little amount of distortion over the full bandwidth, that means that outside the one note that they chose, that distortion is going to be larger. Yeah. And that's, as Paul said with his little yellow button, bullshit.
Yeah. Now with Klipsch, basically they are so transparent. Everything in the heritage line is super transparent. So what you put into it is what you get out of it. So
Gigo. Yep. Garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah. So whether it be the recording, whether it be the amp, if the amp is sending a ton of distortion, if the recording is garbage, you are going to hear every bit of that through the heritage line speakers. So that hiss that people hear from the amplifier in the horns of the speaker is the total harmonic distortion, the signal to noise ratio, which is a big one on that. You need to have a very high signal to noise ratio to eliminate that hiss. And then the transients in the amplifier are extremely important, especially on a dynamic speaker like Klipsch. Like having a high dampening factor on that amplifier really helps that. What that dampening factor says is there's a lot of capacitor built into the outputs of the amp. And as you draw current, it draws it from the power supply. And as it starts to run out, those capacitors help fill that up. So having a lot of capacitor in there and that high dampening factor helps that amplifier recover quickly from a large current draw. It's like a battery backup system.
Yeah, a lot like that.
It's like if the amp needs time to recharge, essentially it's going to give the power from here instead while the amp is recharging.
If you know anything about a well at a house, a well will have a backup tank, a pressure tank, and then there's the well. Well, you could just pump straight out of the well and you get X amount of water out of that tank. Well, if you turn another valve on, Now your pressure goes down. Well, that tank has pressure built in it. So when you turn that second valve, the water pressure doesn't drop. It's kind of the same thing with a capacitor and an amplifier. It's sitting there holding extra so that when you ask more than you currently have, it can provide that extra. So the dampening factor really helps.
We're going back to the amp question instead of the heritage question.
Well, but it ties together because the heritage are so revealing speakers. You need to have the amplifiers that have those kinds of traits in them to be able to not see the bad things from the or not hear the bad things from the amplifier that you can get.
Well, theoretically, there won't be the bad things to hear is essentially what we're getting at.
Exactly. If you can eliminate them early in the signal path, you'll be doing a lot better for your system.
So this is part one of many. So I mean, I'm sure we'll be doing this Q&A for quite a while because this has been the most popular requests for videos, is just answering basic questions, setup, and so forth. So this is part one.
I expect these will be a little more hands-on pictorial instead of us sitting and talking. Mm-hmm. How do you do this? And we'll sit down and do it. Well, I talked to Corey tonight about swapping out a diaphragm on a tweeter. Doing that, showing how it comes apart, showing how it goes back together, showing how you blow it with a square wave. And
did you have both eyes at the camera?
and then showing what it looks like afterwards. Okay. So I actually brought a THX HF driver to do that.
Okay. So the theory with these are that the Q&A sections are going to be quick yes or no's or quick topics to cover, and then the more in-depth questions that you guys have, we could do full videos or half videos or tech tidbits or something like that to completely make sure we are completely answering the question. So.
Or at least an attempt to.
Yeah.
So this has been part one of our Q&A session. I think we'll probably have a few more of these down the road as we take the comments and questions generated from this one.
Yeah. Answer questions, you just get more questions.
And
right?
there's more questions to answer. Thus, we're going to move on to a second version of this. And then later on, I suspect we'll have some hands-on videos of how you set up your system, or how you aim that, or how you hook this up, or how you fix this, or just tech type things, I assume. But it's all up in the air as to what the viewers would like to see us do.
Yeah, we want to see it. We want to hear from you guys. So make sure you comment below and tell us exactly what you want to see, because the next video is dependent on what you guys want.
All right. So until next time, I'm Trey.
Jason.
We'll see you.
We had already shot the next episode, but we wanted to get this out to you right away. So we're just going to tack this on to the end of the next episode. So here's exactly how we are running this contest. So here is a list of all of the names that have commented and have subscribed to our channel. I typed this out manually, so my eyes hurt. I'm a little cross-eyed right now.
And if there's some transposed letters, please excuse.
Yes, exactly. So essentially what we're going to do is I've used a program where we're going to select all of these names. We're going to copy all of these names and run over here. And right now you can see Jason, Trey, Corey, and Steven are in this. And what this is going to do is you pick a random name. It's going to shuffle between all of them, and it's going to give us the name of the winner. So the winner, Trey wins.
What'd I get?
Nothing. So, so what we're going to do is we're going to erase our names from it, pop in all of your names, and you guys ready to see who won?
Hit random go.
Let's go.
Oh, you took our names out, by the way.
Yes. So the winner for this session,
I suck as a drummer.
Eric Dorn. Eric Dorn, you are the winner of the RP600Ms. Reach out to us by email at the email address below, and essentially we're gonna go through some verification process to make sure you are who you say you are, and we're gonna send you a pair of RP600Ms. Congratulations, Eric Dorn. We'll talk to you soon.
Nobody else can be Eric Dorn, only Eric.
Only Eric. See you guys next week. So this Q&A section, this has been the first portion, part 1 of the Q&A session. Part 2 will be released when we run out of video content and need a filler. Part 2 will be released shortly, so be sure and stay tuned for that.
Part 2 will be released after we deal with all the comments from part 1.
Yes.